Welcome, listeners, to the Future of Fashion podcast hosted by the Exponential Academy. At the Academy, we inspire industry leaders to come to grips with the exponential advancement in technology. In other words, we inspire industries to change company culture to keep up with the pace of technology. We have somebody very interesting in our studios today. She is an educator, an innovator, and an entrepreneur. She is a published author. She has spoken in hundreds of conferences globally. She is a specialist in retail digitalization. In 2019, she started a circular concept store called the Hot Second, which exchanged physical goods for digital experiences. It's never been done before. In 2021, she co-founded the DEMATERIALISED, which was a marketplace for fashion NFTs. And in 2023, the TED conference pulled her to address a large audience to talk about what's the point of digital fashion. We'd love to welcome Karinna Grant into our studio today. Welcome, Karinna.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Karinna, just for our audience, very quick background on what got you to the position you are in today, and two, what's keeping you busy these days?
Yeah, sure. So next year, I've worked in fashion for 30 years, which is a scary statistic. Started my career on the shop floor and worked in visual merchandising, then also buying and PR. I spent a decade working in academia, and then I pivoted to being a futurist. And more recently, in the last 5 years, I have been a digital fashion entrepreneur. And right now, I'm very excitingly concepting a new digital fashion business, which I plan to launch at the end of 2025.
And based on your TED Talk, what is the technology that you are excited about that you believe can change the fashion industry to the better?
I couldn't pick one, so I've picked three, but I promise I'll go fast. So the first one is digital product passports, which are coming into legislation in the EU specifically, but they seem to be adopted more widely. So I want to make sure that they are a little bit more immersive and visceral rather than just like plain text that tells you what the garment composition is and how it could be circular and how it could be disposed of and kind of composable. And I feel like for me, it's crazy if a digital product passport is not on chain, that it is so suited to be on a blockchain. So that's number one. The second one is virtual try-on. I've been working in that space in the last year, and I really see that as a win-win for everybody who takes part, for the retailer, for the consumer, for the brand. It makes the experience more fun, particularly if you're shopping online or in a store as well. It de-risks the decision making. It makes you buy hopefully fewer but the right kind of decision products for you. And also the kind of environmental impact, fewer returns, less of what we call bracketing when you need to buy a size up and a size down, which again is a win-win for everybody. And the last one, probably my favorite one, is around digital product management. And I've just published some research that offers a kind of taxonomy around digital fashion, digital product creation, because something I've discovered is some people aren't adopting it because it's too confusing and a bit kind of like abstract. And I passionately believe that digital product creation and adopting digital fashion as an end product can, in the bigger picture, make fashion more responsible.
Fascinating. Thank you for that. Another point that really struck out in one of your articles is the concept of dematerialization. Right. So you spoke about that. So can you shed some light into what is dematerialization? Are there challenges? Are there consequences, opportunities?
Yeah. So I guess first of all, to describe it, I mean, in very basic terms, I kind of describe it as any digital representation of a clothing piece or accessory. So it could be an AR filter that you experience on a social media platform. It could be a hologram and a window display inside a physical store. It could be a pair of jeans or a dress that you put on your kind of Bitmoji avatar that you use within messaging, or it could be the digital twin of a physical item that you've added to your wardrobe optimization software if you had it. So there's many different things that dematerialization kind of could be. And also, I would suggest has a lot of unknown kind of opportunities and consequences. So the positive ones, I feel like if you are a digital fashion creator, it offers you the really limitless kind of potential in terms of creativity because you don't have constraints like gravity or the cost of raw materials and things like that. And related to that, I feel like it kind of offers people a more democratized experience, particularly within the kind of design and kind of creator economy, because the barriers to entry are much lower than if you want to be a physical fashion designer. You don't need to go to fashion school. You basically kind of need an internet connection and time and dedication to teach yourself kind of, there's many free software available. And then and I feel it's also more accessible in terms of price point. So if you do have a love and a desire for fashion and design, this is a way that you might have an entry point, particularly if you, I don't know, live in a location in the world where maybe you don't have lots of like, I don't know, fashion kind of happenings around you. On the other side, the flip side, the challenge is that we don't know yet if it kind of moving more towards mass adoption of kind of digital fashion. Will consumers just buy more physical clothing and more digital fashion clothing? So is it just more and more kind of like consumption and I guess kind of capitalism and stuff? Rather than, as something I suggested in my kind of TED talk, that maybe in the future we'll need smaller wardrobes because maybe we can get like our dopamine hits and we can convey our personality through the way we dress ourselves in digital environments. And I would say like the other kind of thing is that there's a kind of, if there is a true contraction in demand in the future of physical clothing, then, and I know that this might be kind of key to your heart of your background, what happens in the supply chain of those who create those physical garments? What's the impact of that? And I have read about certain kind of factories upskilling or retraining their workers to move more into this kind of digital arena. But as far as I know, it's very niche and very small.
If the future is going to be in this window that we're going to see more and more of our colleagues across the globe through the window of your laptop,
Mm.
then you could be wearing a digital cardigan right there.
So when you see something digitally that you love so much that you want to manifest it physically, to me, that's a very kind of interesting proposition. And we're starting to see it happen already.
So, keeping that in mind, what do you think industry leaders, whether they head up marketing or whether they head up merchandising or whether they head up a supply chain, what should they be thinking of today to stay ahead in the game with the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas?
I mean, with something I've tried to recommend to companies that I've maybe been advising is that I think they need to have a regular consumer panel that has like that generation within it. Because sometimes, unless, and I know this from examples of kind of zeitgeist moments within digital fashion, certain digital fashion projects would not have gone ahead unless that decision maker did not go home, as you said with your children, and say to their kids, hey, I've got this idea in work. Do you think it's good? And if that child never said, yes, dad, or yes, mom, you should do it, certain things in the history of digital fashion just would have not existed. And so I think it's just essential for companies to have that emotional kind of and regular connection to the current generations and next generations, and also I guess what are the spaces that those generations are in, where are those conversations happening, are they on Roblox, are they in another, I don't know, space where consumers are. And I think that's practice and has been over time.
I would like to hear your thoughts on if you could run a company knowing what we are heading towards, right? And it's a fashion company. I mean, you could call it whatever you want. It's
Okay.
you are going to generate revenue by making people feel good. Today, it's by selling product. Which area would you focus on to completely change the way we do business?
I mean, I hate getting pinned down to one kind of specific area, but kind of again, I'm choosing two. I guess one has to be in how the products are manufactured. So really looking at that supply chain and moving away from the broken systems that we operate in of push manufacturing and over manufacturing. We have the tools there to create digital samples, to share them with our audiences, to test demand before anything goes into production. And I think that should be a hygiene factor within the future. And then I think in terms of like kind of post-consumption, I think the new legislation around DPP will help because it's making consumers and brands more cognizant of, right, okay, yeah, I'm not just buying this for this moment in time. This, often if it's a polyester or an acrylic garment, is going to live for as longer than my children and longer than my children's children. And I think very often, especially with fast fashion, that just isn't on your radar. You're like, I just want to look good for X moment or for posting on TikTok or something like that. It's an issue and a problem we have. And I think anything that changes that kind of rhetoric, and also I guess having alternative mechanisms for consumption that are becoming more acceptable and widespread, like resale, repair, rental, etc. Having all of these options so that you buying new doesn't always have to be the first thing that you do. I think I can't remember who made that kind of alternative, an alternative to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that actually buying a new thing is maybe last. And then if you do need to really buy a new thing, buy the best that you can kind of possibly afford and understand the provenance and think about where it's been made and how it's been made and what you can do with it. So I don't know, it's a very layered answer to a kind of big question, but for me it's how it's made and then what you I guess the choice you make about when you buy it and then what you do with it after.
I think one of the largest footprints of the entire value chain is the end of life, and today I think it's just around 40% that actually reaches a curbside to be taken away to either orphanages or Salvation Army, but quite often it's being shredded and downcycled.
Yeah.
And
It's
and I
terrible.
think with technology like the digital passport, there will be purity in material. So these huge recycling organizations that I've encountered in the US or in Germany, with information, they would be able to recycle. I mean, 10x more than what they're doing today.
We'll also have a true picture of exactly how many garments. Well, I guess it depends where the regulations will be enforced, but I know there's a number of campaigns just now for retailers to admit how many units they're kind of producing a year as well, which is without that data, then we can't help to get a kind of better
Yeah,
solution around it.
I think yeah, enforcement by the state would have a huge impact because I remember the time when the unique product identification label was just one, and then the EU said it's got to be in 7 languages, and then it became a thick book on your sightsee because it
Yeah,
had
it's big.
it had to have all the languages, and that if that can be digitized, it kind of leads to the passport, and then that information can be shared. So maybe the last question
Sure.
before we wrap up, Karina, as a futurist, what would be one piece of advice that you would give a future CEO of a potential successful fashion brand?
I mean, it's got to be experimentation. And one of the things I was also thinking about is like emerging tech stroke experimentation stroke innovation, making sure that's a standing agenda point for any kind of company-wide meeting, so that you've got full organizational kind of buy-in and understanding of, let's all think about ways collectively that we can look at emerging tech to see what can be implemented to make things better. And then try it. I guess, your earlier question, which was about should fashion companies kind of act a bit more like tech companies? I think that's the one thing that a fashion company should take from tech, that kind of experimentation, fail fast, and then kind of see what works, because a lot of fashion companies just really suffer from inertia or won't do anything until their competitor does it. And that drives me absolutely crazy. So experiment.
Love it. Thank you. That's a fantastic note to end this conversation. Karinna, thanks a lot. We're going to
Thanks so
follow
much.
you from all your other talks that you're going to make globally. We're going to keep in touch.
Super.
And once again, thank you for making the time.
Thank you.